I've spent 94 years on this earth asking questions. Some I found answers to, most I didn't. But there was one question that haunted me more than any other, one question that kept me awake in the darkest hours of the night, one question that every philosopher, every theologian, every thinking person has wrestled with since the beginning of time. Why do good people suffer? I asked that question to Jesus Christ himself, face to face, in a dream that was more real than any reality I've ever known. And his answer shattered every assumption I'd ever made about God, about suffering, about the very nature of existence itself. Let me tell you what he told me, because it changed everything. But first you need to understand the darkness that led me to ask the question. It started with a funeral. Not just any funeral, the funeral of a woman I'd known for 30 years, Sarah. She'd been a production assistant on one of my early films, back when I was still finding my way as a director, young, brilliant, full of life and faith, and an almost annoying optimism about the goodness of the universe. She believed in God, really believed, not the casual Sunday morning kind of belief, but the deep in your bones certainty that there was a loving creator watching over everything. She volunteered at homeless shelters. She gave away more money than she kept. She prayed for people, actually prayed with her whole heart, believing it mattered. And cancer ate her alive. Not quickly. That might have been merciful. No, it took 3 years. 3 years of watching this vibrant, faithful, genuinely good person waste away. 3 years of prayers that went unanswered. 3 years of her faith being tested until even she, in the final months, whispered questions into the darkness that no one could answer. I sat at her funeral, and I listened to the pastor talk about God's mysterious ways, about how Sarah was in a better place now, about how her suffering had purpose, even if we couldn't see it. And I felt something harden in my chest. Anger, maybe, or maybe just exhaustion with easy answers to impossible questions. I'd seen too much suffering in my life. Not just Sarah. I'd watched good men die in wars they didn't start, for causes they didn't choose. I'd seen children born into poverty and pain through no fault of their own. I'd watched honest, hard-working people lose everything while liars and thieves prospered. I'd seen enough to know that if there was a God, he had some serious explaining to do. That night after the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, and the question burned in my mind like acid. Why? Why do good people suffer? Why did Sarah suffer? What kind of God allows that? And maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was grief, maybe it was something else entirely. But I spoke into the darkness of my bedroom, and I wasn't talking to myself. If you're real, I said, my voice rough with emotion, if you're actually out there, then I need you to explain this to me, because I don't understand. I can't understand. Why do good people suffer? I didn't expect an answer. But I got one. Sleep took me, and then I was somewhere else entirely. The transition wasn't gentle. One moment I was in my bed, angry and exhausted, and demanding answers from a God I wasn't even sure I believed in. The next moment I was standing in a place that existed outside of space and time. Imagine standing in the center of a vast library, except instead of books, the shelves hold moments, lives, every joy, every sorrow, every triumph, every tragedy that has ever occurred or ever will occur. The air hummed with something I can only describe as concentrated meaning. Purpose so dense it was almost visible. And Jesus was there. Not the pale, delicate figure from Renaissance paintings, not the sanitized Sunday school version. This was, I don't have words for what this was. He looked like a carpenter who'd worked with his hands his whole life. Strength in his frame, scars on his palms that I could see even from a distance. But his eyes held something ancient and eternal and impossibly compassionate. Clint, he said, and my name in his voice sounded like coming home. You asked a question. You demanded an answer. Are you ready to truly hear it? Because the answer isn't what you think. The answer isn't comfortable, but it's true. I found my voice, though it shook. Why do good people suffer? Why did Sarah have to go through that? She loved you. She served you. She believed in you, and you let her die in agony. Explain that to me. He didn't flinch from my anger, didn't rebuke me for my tone. He just looked at me with those eyes that held oceans of sorrow and love, and he said something that stopped my heart. First, he said, let me show you what you think you know about suffering. Then let me show you what you don't know, what you can't know, what only I can see. And then he showed me Sarah's life from a perspective I'd never imagined. The scene around us shifted like a film cut, and suddenly I was watching Sarah, not in her final days, but years earlier. I recognized the moment. It was on my film set during a particularly difficult shoot. Tempers were flaring, the crew was exhausted, and I was being myself, demanding, critical, pushing everyone to their limits. I watched Sarah Young, barely 23, step in when one of the older crew members broke down crying from the stress. I'd never seen this. I'd been too focused on the shot, too absorbed in my own perfectionism. But Sarah had seen. She'd taken this woman aside, made her tea, listened to her pour out her struggles, not just work struggles, life struggles, a dying parent, a collapsing marriage, despair so deep it had pushed her to the edge of something final. And Sarah had talked her back from that edge. Watch, Jesus said quietly. I watched as that crew member went home that night. Watched as she called a therapist instead of following through on the dark thoughts that had been consuming her. Watched as over months and years she rebuilt her life, found help, found healing, eventually found joy again. She lived, Jesus said, because Sarah noticed, because Sarah cared, because Sarah was there in that moment. But I started to speak. I'm not finished, he said gently. The scene shifted again. The crew member, now 10 years older, healthier, at a school where she worked as a counselor. I watched her notice a teenage girl sitting alone at lunch, the same defeated posture she'd once had, watched her reach out, connect, listen, and eventually help that girl get the mental health support she desperately needed. That girl lived too, Jesus said, because Sarah saved someone who would save someone else. The scene shifted again and again and again, each time showing me ripples spreading out from that one moment of kindness. The teenage girl grew up to become a social worker. She saved dozens of lives over her career. Some of those lives went on to touch hundreds more, thousands more. This is what you don't see, Jesus said, and his voice carried infinite sadness. You see Sarah's suffering, you see her pain, you see what looks like waste, like tragedy, like meaningless cruelty. But I see the whole picture. I see the lives she touched. I see the ripple spreading out through time. I see the kingdom being built through her faithfulness, through her love, through the very suffering you think I should have prevented. But she died, I said, and my voice broke. She died in pain. Yes, Jesus said simply, she did. And so did I. That's when he showed me something that broke me completely. The scene changed again, and I was standing on a hill. I recognized it immediately, even though I'd never been there. Golgotha, the place of the skull, and on the cross hung Jesus himself, somehow both standing beside me and dying in front of me at the same time. I'd seen depictions of the crucifixion 1,000 times, in art, in films, in churches, but this was different. This was real. The agony wasn't sanitized. The suffering wasn't symbolic. It was brutal, physical, absolutely unbearable to witness. This is what you need to understand, Jesus said, his voice now coming from beside me while his body hung broken before me. I am not a God who watches suffering from a distance. I am not a God who demands what I'm unwilling to give. I entered into suffering. I chose it. I embraced it. But why, I asked, tears streaming down my face now. Why would you? You could have stopped it. You could have called down angels. I could have avoided all suffering. He interrupted mine and everyone else's. I could have created a world without pain, without death, without any possibility of hurt. Do you know what that world would be? I shook my head. A world without love, he said. A world without choice, a world without meaning. Because love that is compelled isn't love at all. It's programming. And meaning that comes without cost isn't meaning. It's just existence. He turned to face me fully, and I saw tears on his face too. I gave humanity freedom, he said. Real freedom. The freedom to choose love or hate, to create or destroy, to heal or harm. And that freedom, that terrible, beautiful freedom, comes with consequences. It means cancer exists. It means accidents happen. It means good people sometimes suffer at the hands of a broken creation and broken people. So you're saying it's our fault? I asked. No, he said firmly. I'm saying it's the cost of something more valuable than safety. It's the cost of authentic existence, of real love, of genuine meaning. A puppet can't suffer, Clint, but a puppet can't love either. I wanted children, not machines. I wanted a relationship, not compliance. And that meant risk. That meant suffering was possible. I stood there watching him die, watching myself ask him questions, and something started to shift in my understanding. But you didn't just allow suffering, I said slowly. You entered into it. Yes, he said. And that's the point you've been missing. Every person who suffers, I suffer with them. Every tear shed I collect. Every pain endured I feel. I'm not distant, I'm not removed, I'm not a cosmic watchmaker who wound up the universe and walked away. I'm Emmanuel, God with you, God in you, God suffering alongside you. Then he showed me Sarah one more time and everything changed. We were back in that impossible library of moments, and Jesus gestured to a particular shelf.
Watch Sarah's last day, he said.
I didn't want to. I'd been there. I'd seen enough suffering. But he insisted, and the scene unfolded before me. Sarah in her hospital bed, body wasted, breath labored, but conscious, alert, and there sitting beside her, her oncology nurse, a young woman I'd never met, whose name I didn't know. I watched this nurse, Melissa, I somehow knew her name now, hold Sarah's hand. And I watched Sarah in her final hours, still thinking of others, still concerned about this young nurse who'd been caring for her. Tell me about your daughter, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. And Melissa, thinking she was just humoring a dying patient, started talking, started sharing. Her daughter was sick too. Different illness, but the medical bills were crushing. The marriage was breaking. The hope was fading. I'll pray for you, Sarah said, even on the other side. I'll ask him to watch over your daughter. The nurse smiled sadly, not really believing, but touched by the gesture anyway. She's going to be okay, Sarah said with sudden clarity, with certainty. I don't know how I know, but I know. God just told me. Your daughter will recover. Your family will survive this. There's hope. I watched Melissa dismiss it as the words of a dying woman. Watched her say her goodbyes when Sarah slipped into unconsciousness an hour later. Watched her drive home, exhausted and hopeless. Then Jesus fast-forwarded time. Melissa's daughter did recover, against all odds, against all medical predictions. A spontaneous remission that doctors called miraculous. And Melissa, remembering Sarah's final words to her, started asking questions about faith, about God, about whether there was something more than random chance at work in the universe. I watched her journey over the next years, watched her come to faith, watched her change how she treated her patients, bringing not just medical care but spiritual comfort, watched her influence spread to other nurses, to patients, to families, watched the ripples again spreading out into eternity. Sarah's suffering wasn't meaningless, Jesus said quietly. Her pain wasn't waste. Every moment of it, every prayer she prayed through tears, every act of faith when faith seemed foolish, all of it was weaving a tapestry that you couldn't see because you were standing too close to it. But she hurt, I said. So much. Yes, Jesus acknowledged, and I wept with her. Every night, every moment of pain. I was there. I am always there. And Clint, here's what you need to understand. I could have removed her suffering at any moment. I could have healed her body, extended her life, made her comfortable. But she asked me for something different. He showed me another moment, Sarah in prayer, months before her death. God, she prayed, if my suffering can somehow bring others to you, if my pain can somehow serve your kingdom, then I accept it. I don't want it. I'm terrified of it. But I trust you. Use me however you need to, even if it costs me everything. I fell to my knees, because I'd never known. She'd never told anyone about that prayer. She'd suffered, yes. She'd questioned. She'd struggled, but at the deepest level, she'd surrendered. She'd chosen to trust, even when trust seemed impossible. Jesus knelt beside me and spoke words I'll never forget. Clint, he said, his hand on my shoulder, you asked why good people suffer. And here's the truth you need to hear. Here's the answer that will sound cruel if you don't understand it in the context of eternity. I looked up at him, waiting. Good people suffer for the same reason I suffered on that cross, he said. Because suffering, when united with love, becomes the most powerful force in the universe. It transforms, it redeems, it saves. Not because suffering itself is good, it's not. Suffering is the result of a broken world. But because I can take something meant for destruction and use it for creation, he helped me to my feet. Every act of faithful suffering, and I mean faithful, chosen, surrendered to me, every such act sends shockwaves through spiritual reality. It breaks chains you can't see. It opens doors that were locked. It creates possibilities that didn't exist before. Sarah's suffering wasn't punishment. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't meaningless pain. It was participation in the same redemptive work I did on the cross. So you want us to suffer? I asked. No, he said firmly. I want you to live in a perfect world where suffering doesn't exist. That's what I'm building. That's what's coming. But until that day, until the final restoration, I'm asking you to trust me with the suffering that does exist, to let me use it, to believe that I'm weaving something beautiful out of something terrible. He showed me one more image, a tapestry viewed from the back. It was chaos, knots and tangles and threads going every direction with no apparent pattern. But viewed from the front, it was breathtaking. Every thread had purpose. Every knot was necessary. Every dark thread made the light threads brighter. Every moment of suffering was woven into a picture of redemption. So beautiful, it made me weep. This is what I'm doing, Jesus said. With every life, with every moment of pain, with every question you can't answer, I'm weaving redemption. I'm creating beauty from ashes. I'm bringing life from death. That's what I do. It's who I am. And then he asked me the question that brought me here tonight. Clint, Jesus said, you've seen what I wanted you to see. You've heard what I wanted you to hear. Now I have a question for you. I waited. Will you trust me? Not with the suffering that makes sense. Not with the pain that has obvious purpose. But with the suffering that still seems senseless. With the questions that remain unanswered. Will you trust that I'm good even when life isn't? That I'm present even when I seem absent? That I'm weaving redemption even when all you can see is chaos? Before I could answer, he continued. Because that's what faith is, Clint. It's not believing in me when everything's going well. It's trusting me when nothing makes sense. It's choosing to believe that I'm good, even when you can't see how. It's surrender, even when surrender looks like foolishness. And then I woke up.
Morning light.
My bedroom, the dream fading, but not the truth of it, not the weight of it. I've thought about that encounter every day since. I've wrestled with it. I've questioned whether it was real or just my subconscious working through grief. But here's what I know. The answer Jesus gave me wasn't the answer I wanted. I wanted him to say suffering is a mistake, that he's going to remove all pain immediately, that good people won't have to endure hard things anymore. But that's not what he said. He said suffering, when surrendered to him, becomes redemptive, that he doesn't waste our pain, that he's present in it, weaving something we can't see from threads we don't understand. Does that make Sarah's death okay? No. Death is still the enemy. Cancer is still evil. Suffering is still the result of a broken world. But it means her death wasn't meaningless. It means her pain served a purpose beyond what I could see. It means Jesus was there every moment, suffering with her and transforming her suffering into something eternal. I don't have all the answers. I still have questions. I still struggle when I see innocent people hurt. But I have a glimpse of the tapestry from the front, a moment of understanding that there's more happening than I can perceive, a whisper from God himself that he's good, even when life isn't. And maybe that's all faith ever is, trusting a God we can't fully see, to do work we can't fully understand, for purposes we can't fully grasp, trusting that the one who entered into suffering himself knows what he's doing with ours. So when you ask me why good people suffer, I'll tell you what Jesus told me. Because we live in a broken world waiting for final redemption. Because freedom to love requires the possibility of pain. Because God doesn't waste anything, not even suffering. And because he's weaving something more beautiful than we can imagine, from threads that, viewed from our limited perspective, look like chaos. Sarah died. That's true, but Sarah's life and even her death brought life to others. That's also true. Both things are true, and somehow in God's hands the second truth redeems the first. That's the answer that left me speechless. Not because I don't have words, but because the words I have don't seem adequate to contain the mystery and the beauty and the terrible, wonderful truth of it. Thank you for listening.